Hi guys, welcome to another Folly of Starnet webcast. So, hi everybody. It's Nick Maley, Yoda Guy again. I'm here at home today. You can see Yoda's in the background over there. He's just making sure that I don't sneak off to the beach or anything, because the beach is literally just over there, about 100 yards. We've got a number of guests that I'm going to bring in today for this, Ask That Yoda Guy questions. I'm encouraging people to ask anything that they want to ask. Hopefully it won't get too rude, and we'll take it from there. Now, just as I say, just over there is the beach, and offshore about half a mile is an island called Tintamere, and joining us from a boat on that island is one of our guests today, and here he is. How are you?
Very well. Our signal is a little bit choppy out here, much like the sea, so hopefully we'll manage to stay connected.
I can see it's breaking up a little bit, but I think you're the first person who has ever joined. I know you're the first person that's ever joined us from sea. Okay, I'm just glad you're not, under sail, so that you're, flopping around as we talk. So I'm going to bring on some of the other guests here. Ian, my good friend Philip Conrad, who's coming in from Vienna. There you go. There's Phil. Young Nick, who's one of the youngsters that came through the museum not that long ago, a few years ago, and was inspired to start making props and other things. You can see what a great job he's doing. We've also got my great supporter, who's always there for us. Cynthia, who works for Disney World when Disney World is open anyway. And lastly, from Puerto Rico, another friend, Eric, who's always has me hang out at his house when Eric's just disappeared. Always has me hang out at his house, and I guess he'll come back again. Hang on, here he comes. Maybe soon. Okay, well, when he comes, we'll deal with it. How are you all doing?
Doing well.
Good. Very well.
Yeah, so here we go. Here's Eric from Puerto Rico. He has this room that he calls the Nick Maley Suite. That's where you are right now, right, Eric? Eric, you hear me? Yeah, you need to speak up a bit. So, Ian, let's start with you. You do interviews all over the place, don't you? You've got your own YouTube channel that everywhere you go on your boat, you're asking people questions, isn't that right?
That's right. A bit of a low-key plug there. Yeah, my wife and I sail around, hopefully around the world. We've started off pretty much running up and down the Caribbean, and we had the pleasure of interviewing you just the other day in the exhibition. And absolutely loving this opportunity to ask you more questions. So, I mean, I actually wrote a couple down. If I may fire off with one straight away.
Yeah, let's find out. What's your first question?
Well, I'm interested to ask more on your situation with regards to St. Martin, the foundation itself, and also the Yoda Guy exhibition. You've got the cruise ships are also on hold at the moment because of all the COVID scenario. You're building up this wonderful online presence with such amazing, talented people who you can come and ask questions.
I'm very lucky to have a lot of good friends.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was just wondering, how do you see things progressing over the next weeks, months, as you move more things online and hopefully things start to open up at home?
Yeah, we're beginning to see something from tourists that are coming in by plane. And I'm hoping, I got my fingers crossed that, the vaccines are going to make a difference there. But traditionally, they're only like 10% of our visitors. And so, if I see 3 couples in a day, that's a big improvement, but it's also not enough to to make everything work out. I don't think we're going to see much from the ships this year. We'll find out, but I'm working on the internet to try and be less dependent on the ships as the future comes by, and I'm actually enjoying being able to talk to so many people in so many places. So, Phil, how are things? I see you've got your recording studio all set up there. I think you've got to do something. You're hosting something else in an hour or two. So,
I'm always working. It's Sunday here, and Sunday is a weekday for me, a work day. And
yeah, me too.
I've just been recording some vocals over here in the recording room before you guys showed up, and we just had a little break for dinner. And then in a little bit, I'm going to help somebody record their podcast, but I'll be able to stay on here. I'm just going to.
So, have you got a starter question for me?
I do. When are you coming to Austria?
I think that's going to be a while. I usually try to combine doing a convention somewhere with seeing my friends and other things. So you need to organize someone inviting me to a Comic-Con in Austria. Then we can hang out again. But you're always welcome to come visit me by the beach, right? Cynthia, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, good to see you, Nick. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while. We've been kind of busy. I've been trying to get some diversity in our webcasts, and also because Gloria broke her arm, I found myself quite delayed because being delayed by just not being, basically my work day got cut in half because often I have work days that where I might stay over, and so my work day can start at 9 in the morning and finish at 1 o'clock the next morning, and I get a lot more done in that time than I do getting there at 11 and having to leave by 6. So Eric's back with us. Eric, how are you?
Excellent. If you can hear me, I'm fine.
I can hear you. Yeah,
much better.
Cool. So, how are things in Puerto Rico?
Everything is good. The weather great like always.
Is COVID affecting things a lot in Puerto Rico?
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah, right. So, tell me, what's your first question?
First question from my friend Nick. Was supposed to be when you're coming back, but talking about props, I never asked you how you start.
How did I start making props? Actually, I started as a kid. My dad was an actor, and so he would do cabaret because he was a singer as well, and so he would do cabaret as part of the summer. Kind of part of the summer season. He would do shows in the West End. Things like Paint Your Wagon and Carousel and classic musicals. But when he wasn't doing that, well, then he would do ice shows in the winter and cabaret in the summer. And so, to do cabaret, he would need props. So he'd do 76 trombones, and he'd make we would make a hat for him that looked like he was in a brass band, and various other props. So as a kid, I kind of grew up with with the idea of making that stuff. My mum made most of the stuff, to be quite honest, but it helped me. It helped me get into that mindset, I guess. I didn't immediately think that I would make props. I didn't immediately think I was gonna work as a makeup artist, let alone as an effects makeup artist. I thought that I'd probably be a comedian, because when you do the cabaret, the comedian's always top of the bill. And I guess I always wanted to be the center of attention. And so, at school, every time the teacher went out of the room, I'd stand up and tell jokes to all the other kids. Because in cabaret, they have like 4 different shows that they put on in the hope that during a month, someone will come every week, and they want to see a different show. And so, I learned all these different jokes. So that was where I thought it would be. It was only when I got older and I realized that I wasn't going to be tall and handsome. Everybody lied to me, And when I realized that, then I knew maybe I better make the most of these other things that I'd learned along the way. So, Eric, we got to Nick. Everybody's changed position. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but anyway, Nick, tell me, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, cool. So, Nick, tell me, what's your question? What's your first question?
Well, a lot of my questions are based on your book.
Cool.
So my first one is, what inspired you to write a book that helps others succeed?
Yeah, well, this all comes about because as a kid, when I was 13, I hadn't focused at school. I was considered to be, something of a fool, and definitely a dreamer. And my teacher kind of wanted me to get serious and explain to me that I was going to work in a factory and I should give up all these crazy ideas. And it galvanized me to try and prove that he was wrong. And every time I thought that I would have to give up, I thought about going back and seeing that teacher and telling him that he was right. You were right. I should have listened to you 3 years ago. You were right. I should have listened to you 5 years ago. You were right. I should have listened to you. I wasted another 7 years, And that would keep me going for another week, because the last thing I wanted to do was go back and admit that he was right. When you're trying to achieve something extraordinary, something difficult, it's a long journey. If someone expects it to happen, that there might be one person in 100,000 that it just falls in their lap. But most people, they have to struggle to find the right people, to know the right people, to persuade those people to take them seriously, to wait for the opportunity to arise. It's not something that comes easily. And I wanted to help other people, particularly young people like yourself, understand that you don't have to go with what everybody else is doing. You don't have to go to school in order to get a good job, in order to work at something you don't want to do for 40 years, and then be retired by somebody else and sit in a chair and wait to die. You don't have to do that. If you believe in yourself, you can make your life more interesting. If you grow every day, which is what I do. It's difficult for me to admit it, but I'm in my 70s now, and I'm still trying to learn stuff as I go along, trying to stay current, dealing with those things, because it keeps your brain alive, it keeps your heart alive, it keeps everything going. So I really wanted to share that at a time, particularly when people are starting in life and they're not weighed down by responsibilities that force many people to go and do the job that they don't want to do because they've got to feed the children, or because they've got to pay off their university fees, or whatever else. So that was really what inspired me to write the book. But I didn't just sit down and write the book. What happened was people like you would come in and I'd have a conversation with you, and something I said just came out of the conversation, and I would just write that one little sentence or phrase down, and when I had enough of them, I just compiled them into a book, and that was that. So I'm just trying to look. We seem to have lost Ian altogether. I guess his internet went down. I think it was extraordinarily connected by boat anyway. I think I'm back to Phil again. So Phil, you got another question? Tell me.
Yeah, let's talk about the book. What was the process you went through in writing the book? What was your objective as far as, okay, so you wanted young people to be able to read it. You wanted to keep it simple. What process did you go to achieve the goals that you had with the book?
Well, as I say, I started out just by having a file where I wrote down, actually a folder, where every time I had a conversation where I said something that I thought was pertinent, I just wrote it in a little note and stuck it in the folder. So eventually I went into the folder and just started to assemble it, coordinate it into groups, and do it. But there was something else that was there too. You know, as a kid, I was dyslexic. You know, I still to some extent am. I think habit has helped me correct that along the way. You know, 70 years of misspelling things, eventually you've got to start to get it right. And so I had great difficulty in reading in the first place. And then I had attention deficit as well, which meant that every time I sat down to read a book, by the time I got to the 5th page, I was asleep. And so I wanted to write something that were very short chapters, something that was that made a point in no more than 2 or 3 paragraphs that someone could read at breakfast and take away with them through the day. And after 3 months, they would come back to the beginning of the book again and do it again. And so I also put in the book a blank page next to every chapter, we'll call it, every point. So that the person who's reading the book can make their own notes about what they need to do in order to achieve their dreams. Because what I wanted was a manual that helps someone achieve their dreams, not just a book that you read and put on a shelf. I want them to be able to come back after 3 months and see all the things that they said they needed to do that they haven't got done yet. Because what you need is that little prod every day that makes you do a little something and move, just forward, just a little tiny bit every day. As I say in the book, if you get 1 centimeter closer to your dreams every day, eventually you got to get there. And you're going to be in a situation where it might not be, your dreams might not feel achievable today. But if you keep edging and edging and edging and edging and edging, gaining skills that will help you, doing things, looking things up online that will help you, one little thing every day, you get there. Eric, I'm back to you.
Me again. Okay. Everybody knows that you're the famous Yoda Guy.
Yeah, right.
Okay, besides Yoda, tell us about a favorite project in your career.
A favorite project in my career? Well, there were a number of different things that I did. I contributed to maybe, I think it's 63 projects, although some of those were music videos. Some of them were little short things that stick in my mind. Some of them were there were even some commercials that I think were a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing a commercial with Donald Pleasance, who was a big horror guy in his day. And we did a bar full of horror characters, just me and my friend Graham. He got the job and he was kind enough to include me as number 2 in his team. And we made the Wolfman, and we made the Mummy, and we made all kinds of stuff that we're all getting drunk in a bar drinking Pils Lager. That was a fun little throwaway thing. The work that I did on Krull was a very happy movie to make. I always say you can't separate. If you're a movie maker, you can't separate making the movie with watching the movie, because you see a scene and you remember all the stuff that went wrong and what was a nightmare and what wasn't and what made you happy. And so, you know, I think Highlander was a great movie, but it was a miserable experience. And so that was very hard for me to watch. Krull was the exact opposite. They came to me very late in the day. And they were afraid that things, you know, that they wouldn't get what they needed done in the time, and so they just gave me a free hand to do whatever I wanted. And so I literally, you know, I designed that. There was a design for the main villain, the Beast, which was just grey with red eyes, and so I started with that, and then, you know, basically designed all the details and you know, broader shoulders and tiny waist and various other things. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And I was, you know, I was a young guy, head of department on a $40 million movie, when $40 million was about the top. I mean, they made Star Wars for 38. So I'm talking about Empire Strikes Back for 38 million, and so, you know, $40 million movie, that was a big deal. And I had a young crew, and, you know, things just went very well on that movie. So that was it. Cynthia.
Hello.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Because we've talked a lot about your work and how you want to continue to guide and teach people. But honestly, like, I think it's fascinating how you've already been doing that in many ways. Because Brian Sipe, remember when we interviewed him for The Mandalorian? He was the head makeup designer. Krull really influenced him at a young age, and now, you know, he was nominated for
and Brian Sipe's now
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but on the flip side, like, the legacy of your work, like, I'm gonna say Yoda to, let's call in Yoda to Grogu now, because now we have a new iteration of Yoda. What was it like seeing your work? Like, even though you didn't have, like, direct influence on the project, like, how is it seeing your work continue to influence people and inspire people? Like, what feeling did that have, especially like seeing little baby Yoda?
Yeah, it's mixed, because, you know, when you look at something that someone else has done, you look at it and think, yeah, it's good, but, you know, I would have just changed this a little bit, and I would have just done that. But, you know, there is also the fact that it, you know, it is nice for my ego. I mean, to be honest, you know, the credit for what Yoda looked like is absolutely, you know, my old mentor, Stuart Freeborn's credit. But the way it was brought to life through me, through Wendy Midner, through the radio control techs, and of course through the puppeteers, is something that, you know, that I take a lot of pride in. And, you know, I had someone who was criticizing me one time. They said, oh, yeah, you know, you were just part of a team, and you know, you harp on Star Wars all the time. Why don't you harp on, you know, the movies where you were head of department more and be, you know, the Highlander guy or the whatever else? It's because everybody talks to me about Star Wars, and not that many people talk to me about Highlander. And actually, there's a whole story about how I got to be that Yoda guy. That actually wasn't my doing at all. So the thing is that Yoda has become an icon for wisdom, and so, you know, there isn't a character in Star Wars that I could have been more happy to be a part of. I'm not a violent kind of guy. You know, I don't like the idea that everybody wants to judge entertainment by how many people they can kill in a video game. You know, it bothers me. I think, you know, it would be nice to. I don't think a game that was how many people can you save in a video game would be as popular. But you know, I think it would be better for society. And so I getting back to the subject. Yeah, I'm touched by the impact that I have. I'm happy that the things that I say inspire people like Nick to go out and effectively start a whole career based around what he loves doing. Mm-hmm. I'm happy that I had two young people came in and talked to me about the film industry that ended up working on Rogue One. You know, that goes on. That's actually good for my ego too, because I'm pleased that I've been able to have that influence on other people. Nick, I think I'm back to you again.
That's awesome.
All right, so my next question is, a section of your book talks about how you shouldn't let opportunities sail past you. When writing that, were there any opportunities you were specifically remembering about that you missed out on?
There's always going to be something that you miss out on. I mean, whatever happens. When you're making movies, it's all dependent upon you being next to the phone when the phone rings and they offer you the job. We didn't have cell phones on our hips in those days. You know, the phone was something in one corner of one room. And if you didn't happen to be in that room at the time when the phone rang, someone else got the job. I wrote a poem about that one time. I don't focus a lot on my poetry, but I started writing poems when I was 5. And, you know, a poem about fate and about how, you know, if I hadn't been by the phone when they called me to go work on Star Wars, you know, my whole life would have been something entirely different. And so that's one of the reasons why I say you have to focus all the time. You have to shorten the odds as best you can by making sure that you know that those opportunities when they come are going to be there. But there's also there's other thing in my book where I talk about the insecurity that people have about whether or not they should grasp an opportunity that comes by. You know, I compare it with sailboats passing the end of a dock. The thing about a sailboat is it's got no accelerator and it's got no brakes. So, you know, you don't sail up to a dock and stop like you do in a car. It just kind of drifts past the end of the dock. And if you're standing on the end of the dock, you can leap to jump on that passing opportunity. And there's always a chance it's going to be, you know, a disaster. There's always a chance that it's going to take you somewhere that you didn't really expect, and it's not going to be everything that you want. And those people who stand on the end of the dock and just keep questioning whether they should jump or whether they shouldn't, eventually it starts to move away from the dock. It starts to get further and further and further away, and that leap gets to be harder and harder to make. You can spend your life, you know, jumping on those opportunities and making the most of it. And if it takes you somewhere else, that's okay. You jump on the next opportunity and hopefully it'll bring you back on course. Or you can spend your life standing on the dock, wondering where those opportunities might have taken you. That's really what that section is all about. I'm trying to give people the courage to stick at something, and to make the most of those opportunities when they come. There was a time when Yoda, the prototype Yoda had been built, and it had some mechanical hiccups, and they kept on taking it off set for Stu to work on it. This was a very delicate, very complicated mechanism that Stu had made. That was actually really quite beautiful. It was all brass and stainless steel, but super light, very, very thin, and curved like the shape of a brain, so that the puppeteer's hand could move around inside it. And but you know, they hadn't given him enough time to really iron out that, to build it and test it and make adjustments and other things. And they came to me and asked me if I could build a backup, because I was effectively running the workshop. I could have done what many people would do. I could have said, oh gosh, if I build it, I got to build this in a hurry. If I build it and it's no good, I'm going to be the guy who couldn't solve the problem. So maybe it's better to just not do it. Maybe it's better just to, you know, to sit back and not take that opportunity, because I'm afraid I might fail. If I had done that, then no one would be talking to me now. No, you know, that one moment is what changed everything. And eventually people were asking me to be the head of department instead of being one of the senior techs in the workshop. And so, you know, that changed, you know, everything of who I am and how my career evolved after that, and all the other opportunities that came to me. So, you know, I'm just trying to share why it's important to make the most of every opportunity. So I'm back to Phil again.
I got one for you. Looking back on your career, what would be the one thing you wish you would have done differently? Not what's the missed opportunity you think you might should have taken, but what's the one thing looking back you just wish you had maybe, you know, done one thing different?
Yeah, well, there are always things that that you can look back on and say, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. One of the things, I'm someone, I'll make a little list. I'm one of those people that gives 200% to whatever I'm doing. So, you know, like I'm trying to get through some tasks that I have now, and I'm talking, I said earlier, you know, if I sleep at the museum, I can start work at 9 o'clock and finish at 1 the next morning. That's just the kind of person I am. I want to get the you know, the things done. But on at least one movie, probably two, I pushed that to a limit that really, as more and more was being piled on me, I really had great difficulty in carrying, because I was already running at maximum. So one of the things I would say, you know, you give yourself a limit, make sure that you've got enough rest, and hold back just a certain amount of time so that when an emergency comes, it's not pushing you over the edge. In my case, I would say, you know, limit yourself to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then when that horrible thing happens, then you could still go to 16 hours if you had to. If you're already working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and something needs to you know, to increase, you've got nothing left. You're running at capacity. So that would be one thing that that I would say. There were movies that I really would have liked to have done. I was really hoping to do Indiana Jones as head of department, because it came up right after I had helped them solve their Yoda problems. And I thought Lucasfilm, if Stu wasn't going to do Indiana Jones, I thought that, you know, they would look to me as being, you know, the guy who'd solved the problems. And so maybe, you know, I would get that. And they gave it to somebody else. And so I was disappointed with that. And the movie that really, I think, was brilliantly done, and probably would have driven me crazy because of having a completely separate designer. You know, like everyone, I like to do the whole job. I like to design the thing, build it. I even like to film it, right? Have my own unit to shoot my own stuff. Do the storyboards for it too. And so that it would have driven me a little bit crazy, but having seen the first Alien, I was really sorry that I hadn't done that movie. They didn't offer it to me. I didn't turn it down. It wasn't a mistake on my part. Maybe my mistake was in not pursuing the job. I don't know. But you know, when they're making movies, you don't know what movie is going to be what until it's already come out. You know? So that was, I would say, those were the things that come immediately to mind. There are two movies that I, in hindsight, would say I should have turned that down. But when you're freelance and you're worried about paying the mortgage, you tend to take jobs whether you like the person you're shaking hands with or not. And sometimes that can be a real nightmare. So trust your instincts on stuff like that. Eric, I'm back to you again.
Great. Okay. Talking about special effects, I know that you are not so familiar with the CGI. You don't like that. But talking about movies, for you, which movie is the one that you consider the best with special effects? And also, I know that you already watch movies with the CGI. Which one you prefer also that is the best one with the CGI effects?
Yeah, I think the best CGI that I've seen was Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean. When I first saw that, I thought that they had done a prosthetic makeup and that they had digitally, added to it and complemented what had been done physically. But it wasn't. They'd done the whole thing with basically with motion capture. And I think they did it, very seriously, very well. Yeah, it's not that I'm not into CGI. You saw our little logo here. Let me see. Shall I run that again? Okay. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, he's a character that that we spent time making. But making that, I realized for the first time just how long and how complicated it was. I could have built that character and done it as a puppet, probably in half the time that it took to do it in CG. Because first of all, you've got to have the figure, and then you've got to put muscles in it, and bones in it, and then you've got to put skin on it, and then you've got to worry about the light on it, and then you've got to put the twinkle in the eyes, and then you got to it's not as short as people seem to think. And I think there is a great place for CGI in backgrounds, in being able to lay in a set, for example, rather than build an entire set, and be able to use fewer studios because you just keep changing the background images. I think there's a lot of room for stuff there. I like Grogu, the baby Yoda. I think he's sweet, and I think he was. If someone had been sitting there in a think tank and said, "What could we make that would be cuter than Yoda?" It would have to be a baby Yoda, wouldn't it? I mean, I wonder if someone actually had that conversation. But I think they knocked that one right out of the park. And it is physical, made by Legacy Effects in the States. And for a small 14-inch mechanical, I think I think they did a pretty good job. The favorite movies, I can't get away from the original Blade Runner. It's so many years ago, and all of those effects were either visual effects or physical effects. Talking about 1983. And if you look at it, it's got so much depth and so much that is happening in the street scenes and those other things that don't look phony even today. That's another movie I wish I'd worked on. I was working on something else in the studio, and we were in the viewing theater, and Ridley Scott came in to talk to the director. He was editing it at the time, and God, I wished I was on that movie instead of the one that I was on. So I think we're back to Cynthia again.
Yay! Hello. Yes, I have another question.
Tell me.
I think you talked previously about how you would like to keep moving forward with digital content to help the museum and things like that, and not rely on cruise ship industries. You and a lot of makeup artists are looking into that because of what happened this past year. I think V. Neal, who worked on Edward Scissorhands and other Tim Burton films, she just started her own makeup school, actually. Like, they just did the promo for it.
Yeah.
Would you personally ever be interested in opening some sort of makeup school, or like do more workshops digitally? Is that something that is too much for your plate, or are you looking into that?
Okay, well, there's a couple of issues there.
Yeah.
You know, I have considered that along the way. But and V has a good, a significant following because of Face Off, that a lot of people know her name, and therefore, a lot of people are going to take that seriously. Plus the fact she's a really good makeup artist, right? I mean, she really knows her stuff, and on things like Pirates of the Caribbean, which we talked about earlier. Number one, it's a lot of work. In order to make that work, you need to have the workshop space to do it, and the broadcasting stuff to do it. You also need, though, to spend a lot on materials, to bring in those materials, to cover enough independent subjects. I mean, obviously, you can do like a little workshop, a little 4-day workshop on a particular subject and deal with people digitally. But if what I'm doing is I'm looking, let's say, at what Nick is sculpting through the internet, I can't judge that as well as I can in person. If you're doing literally a one-on-one class rather than a presentation on how to sculpt, or a presentation on how to make prosthetic appliances. And I looked at what was being done by the Stan Winston School of Character Arts, where Matt, who's Stan's son, used all the people. I mean, Legacy Effects grew out of Stan Winston's workshop. These were guys that had worked for Stan, and when he died, they started their own studio. And so, you can't really do better than having diverse teachers showing you different ways to do different things. And it doesn't matter who you listen to. Every makeup artist or every specialist has his own little tricks on how he does stuff. And you can watch 3 people give a class on the same subject and get more out of it, because you take a little bit from one guy and a little bit from someone else and a little bit from someone else. So I had looked at that and thought that was that really wasn't going to work out. But what we've done instead is the Stan Winston School of Character Arts is sponsoring the Yoda Guy movie exhibit by, we have a special code, which is Yoda Guy 20. When you subscribe, if you put Yoda Guy 20 in, then they make a donation to the foundation and helps to keep the museum going. So one of the things that we aim to be doing in the next over the course of the next year or so is promoting that, and actually different classes that they've done. And I know this sounds extraordinary because I do have a lot of experience, but to talk about some of their classes, I'm watching some of their classes, and even after all these years, I look at something and say, oh yeah, I never thought about doing that. That's quite a good idea, right? So even people that are professionals who might consider that they know a lot, there's stuff to learn from those classes right there. It'll be interesting to see how V handles that. So, Phil, I'm back to you again.
Do you think, I know if this actually were going to happen or were planned, you probably wouldn't be able to give much of an answer right now to confirm or deny, but would you be willing to entertain a get-together of Groku and Yoda? Just a little hangout?
Yoda? Yes, of course I would.
I'd be interested to see the kind of discussion that would go on there. Maybe Groku would have some questions for Yoda. Yoda might have some questions for Groku.
Yeah, I think
there could be fantastic get together.
Yeah, I think there could be a lot of fun in that. But I, one of the things that I have that we've added to the museum is a Grogu from the original molds, and so eventually, who knows? Maybe I will. Maybe I'm thinking of putting one together to have at conventions with Yoda. Who knows whether how that will go, but we will see.
Sign me up.
Yeah, it would be fun to do that. And one of the things there too is occasionally people, not so much now as before, people will ask me how I felt about the Yoda that they did in episode 8. And obviously, I try not to be critical any more than I have to be, because, I'm a Lucasfilm person, and I wouldn't want to do that. I think that actually they did a pretty good job of building Yoda. But one of the things that I think people overlooked was that Yoda in Empire Strikes Back really looked like he was in the forest. And the reason for that was because he was really in the forest. I mean, they built the whole set 4 feet off the ground, and they just had to move some leaves and take up a piece of plywood and stick the puppeteers down below, and he could be anywhere, in that forest. I think that the way that they filmed Yoda in episode 8 was disappointing. Not the build, but just how much of it they did, and how they filmed. They basically put Yoda on a rostrum in front of green screen and then faked everything else in. So 50% of what you saw was digital, even though the puppet wasn't. And then there's a shot of him standing, and it looks to me, I don't know for sure, but it looks to me like they painted in the whole body from the shoulders down, and just filmed it in the same position on the rostrum with Frank underneath. And so it's not just a matter about how you build something and how you put things together. How you film it is very relevant to it as well. And I'm sure it was cheaper to do, but I don't think that we would all be still talking about Yoda 40 odd years later if he hadn't been so believable, and if the director hadn't given him time to slowly be disappointed with Luke, and to slowly raise that X-wing out of the water. A lot of credit has to go to the director for having the courage to hold on a puppet that long. So there we go. I'm back to Eric. I think Eric's fallen asleep. Your mic's off, Eric. Eric, your mic is off. We can't hear you.
Whoops. Okay, so you didn't
hear
hear
anything. There you go.
Better.
Thank you, Eric. Tell me, my friend.
Okay, nothing of. Okay, Nick, what is the best advice that you have ever gotten?
Oh, well, now that's a really good question. I don't think anybody has ever asked me that question. I may have to rack back through 50 years of stuff. I'll tell you what the best advice was that I've ever gotten. When I was growing up, my mother had some issues, some psychological issues that made her quite difficult sometimes to have to deal with. We're talking about kind of psychological illness, and there were times when being at home was not a joy, because she liked to pick fights, and it was a struggle. The best advice I ever got came from my dad, when I just couldn't understand how he could go on over and over again having to deal with with stuff like that. And he said to me, "You can't control circumstances. You can only control your reaction to those circumstances." I put that in the book. I think it's really the most relevant thing. There are times when we as individuals react to a situation, when really it would be much wiser to take a breath and think about how you should act, not react. Because life throws stuff at you, and usually if you react to a situation, you say something that you regret afterwards, or you escalate a situation, or you completely miss a situation. I'm gonna go back to a previous question that you asked. Was there anything that I regretted? Yeah, I can tell you. There's one time that I was working on Life Force. I was making the death of a vampire bat. We'd sectioned off the steps of the cathedral, and they were making Return to Oz in the same studio at the same time. We were coming towards the end of filming, and I was working on the bat and setting up a false perspective shot, and I turned around and Jim Henson was there. And he had come into the studio specifically to ask me to go work with him on Return to Oz. Now, Jim Henson usually wasn't the guy who came and asked you to work on those movies. He had Bruce Sherman was his producer. And twice I turned Bruce down to work on Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, because Bruce, where he's a money man, so he wanted to keep beating the wages down, and I felt that he was pushing it too hard, and he felt that it was the honor of working with Jim Henson, and I should take like a 50% pay cut, and so I turned him down. Now on that movie they had a designer already for making the creatures, so because they were already in production. And so my instant reaction, getting back to reaction, my instant reaction was to say, I don't want to work under another designer. Here I am, I'm designing my own stuff, I'm building it, and I'm filming it, which I did a lot of in Life Force. And so I very quickly reacted and said what an honor it was that he had come to ask me, but I really didn't want to work under the other designer. And at that moment, I slammed the door in Jim Henson's face, effectively. And I don't think, he was used to the idea that if he asked someone personally, they'd say, no, I don't think so, And so that opportunity was gone forever, right? Afterwards, when I started with writing the book, I started to think, don't react, you need to act. If I had said, you know what, Jim, that's an interesting idea. Let's have lunch tomorrow and we'll talk about it. That gives you the breathing space to think about whether you want to do it, whether you don't want to do it, if there's any other way of doing it that maybe isn't the most obvious. because I tell people, think laterally, don't think in a line. I had thought in a literal line, oh, I don't want to work under that other guy. But if I'd met him for lunch and said, well, I'm directing second unit. If you'd like me to direct second unit, I would have been over the designer instead of under the designer. It was just a matter of me throwing away that opportunity. And who knows, maybe I would never have come to the Caribbean if, if I'd done that. So going round in a circle, I'm back to Cynthia again. I think I am. Have I missed anybody out here? No. Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think it was just the boat connection kind of messed everything up. It's all good. My next question, because it's funny that you brought up Jim Henson in your last explanation, but yeah, sorry, losing words right now. My question is, because I'm just kind of curious if this could turn out to be another opportunity in the future to think about. Have you ever been, because I know you go to a lot of events, like Comic-Con, Star Wars Celebration. Have you ever been to Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia?
I have. I have.
Yeah. Have you visited, because it's literally downtown, like a block from the convention center, have you visited the Center for Puppetry Arts there at all?
I actually didn't. I didn't even know it was there when I did that.
It was
a few years ago. One of the problems with events is that you get whisked along. I mean, I fly in the day before.
Yes.
I get settled in a hotel. I know I got to be somewhere at 8 o'clock. I get my shit together. I get there, and someone else says, "Oh, we've got you doing this, and we've got you doing that." Dragon Con, in many ways, Dragon Con is the event that I like the least.
It's my favorite. That's anyway.
And it's, I think it's an interesting event for attendees, but it's a bit of a nightmare for the guests. And the reason for that is that they hold it in 6 or 7 different hotels. And so when you're signing up for it and they say, oh, we want you to do 2 panels a day, and you're going to be in this room for the first one and in this room for the second one, you don't realize that to get from where you are to that room through 80,000 people in the lobby, in the street, into the car, trying to get into another building, trying to get to the thing, it takes an hour just to get to the room. And then you've got your hour thing, and it takes an hour to get back again. So when you do 2 sessions, you just took 6 hours away from doing autographs, at your table and doing one-on-one. And there were some chaotic things when things go wrong and the car doesn't show up, and you're 30 minutes late for your talk. First of all, you've disappointed those people, but the next talk is going to start in 30 minutes. So you've got to try and squeeze an hour into 30 minutes. So it wasn't great for me. And then once we got to the end of it, to the airport, and I'm gone, right? So sometimes, I think it would be nice to have the opportunity to go somewhere for a week and relax a little bit and see something of those places, particularly if I'm ever lucky enough that people invite me to go to Japan or to some of those more exotic places that I haven't been.
I wanted to continue that question because I think you're right. Like Dragon Con can be very overwhelming for the guests because of the sheer size and crowd of it. But my next question, follow-up question with the Center for Puppetry Arts, because they do have, honestly, one of the best puppetry exhibits in the nation. My roommate, because he's a puppeteer for Disney and things like that, we know the head of that museum, Areta, or one of the heads. And I was just thinking, because would you be interested, like if they contact you at all and say, you do fantastic work, and your legacy with Yoda is really something our museum needs. Would you be open to donating one of your animatronic Yodas to their exhibit that goes year round? I mean, they've got everything there. Like, I'm just curious if that would be something you would be interested in.
I think the problem with donating something like that is the time that's involved in building it. You know, at the time, we were working on Yoda for about 10 months. When we did Empire Strikes Back, we were finding out, you know, how to do it. We were kind of inventing how to do it. So it, you know, obviously there was a lot of time in that, and there was a lot of time that was spent just deciding what Yoda was going to look like. Today, because I have so many other things that I have to do to, you know, keep everything going, it means if I'm lucky, I got 30 minutes or an hour a day involved in making a Yoda puppet. I'm getting to the point where, you know, there are elements that would be easier than making a full working puppet. But to make a full working puppet at the moment would take me probably 6 months. And, you know, it's already taken me longer than that because I had to make the molds, reverse engineer to make the molds and everything else. Now that I've got those, all except the foot that we worked on together, which I'm still working on, you know, I haven't finished that, even though it's been weeks since I've had that, because I've only got half an hour to an hour a day to work on it, right? And so it would be hard to do that. There are, however, you know, maybe elements to show how that went. And certainly, you know, I'd be very happy to do video for them. I don't know if the museum is just a matter of, oh, let's look at let's look at a puppet, or whether they are doing more of an explanatory kind of element. But I'd be very happy to donate, talking about the building of Yoda and the different people and the impact that, you know, that different people had. I'd be very happy to do that for them. I'd be very happy to interact with them. I'm just not sure that that I would be able to do a full, a full animatronic puppet for them.
And honestly, in that vein, and just because I've seen the exhibit, it's an amazing exhibit. They also, especially from Labyrinth and other animatronic heavy shows, they also just display single components just to kind of show people all of the tiny details and workings.
That would be much easier to actually say, there you go, there's a Yoda skull and there's a Yoda skin, and you know, and there's a Yoda body, and we even are, we also have for the Yodas that I'm building now, you know, I'm committed to building 3 more Yoda puppets, which, you know, I've been working on for 2 years at this point. Actually, no, longer than that. I've been working on since 2016. Because the molds came to me from collectors who had acquired the molds, and without those molds, I couldn't reverse engineer. So I have to build one for them. And then there was a go-between who kind of managed to make it all happen. I got to build one for them, and I got to build one for the museum. And so I have those molds. It wouldn't be hard for me to say, okay, here's some components, and you know, make a display out of it, and even do a video to go with it. You know, I don't know if, as I say, whether they do video displays, but you know, eventually I want to do that in our own little museum, to do a section that shows, you know, the various parts that make up a puppet.
Well,
make up a puppet, make up that puppet.
Yeah, definitely. Like they're very good at doing like breakdown displays and very informative instructional displays. It's not exclusively just like a museum that just has a puppet. But if you're interested in the future in being put in contact with them and getting like, you know, follow your star on, you know, it could be good publicity for
No,
them.
no, I would be very happy.
Yeah.
I'd be very happy
Okay.
to interact with them. Very happy to do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool. I was just, that's kind of where this conversation went, because I was like, honestly, I would love to put you in contact with them about that, because I like what your work is would be perfect for what they're trying to do. So, all right, no problem.
Cool. Good question. Nick, I'm back to you.
All right. So I think the page that stuck out to me the most in your book was titled "Build on What You Have That Others Don't."
Yeah.
I personally have learned a lot of new weathering techniques from others who just mess around with different materials and other medias. What do you think is a good starting point to make yourself stand out, whether it's a new technique that you develop or anything else?
No, well, when I said that, what I really was looking at, it relates to another section in there about being the red tree in the forest. You know, if you are another green tree in a forest, then people look right past you. They don't even see you. They don't even know that you're there. And so look at what you have that none of the people you know around you in that environment where you are, that none of them actually have, and focus on that at least at the beginning to separate yourself so that people know who you are, so that people say, oh yeah, I know him, he's that guy who does so and so, I know her, she's that girl with those smart ideas, whatever, you know, whatever it turns out to be. And then build on that to go into other directions based on what opportunities there are in front of you. Yes, you want to be brave enough to experiment with your own ideas, but you know that I get young people who come in. I don't make a big thing usually of my artwork, but I'm not a bad artist, and people come in and ask me, youngsters, about how to do something and what to do. When people start out being an artist, they always copy something that someone else is doing, whether it's Mickey Mouse or whether it is a landscape or whatever else. They're copying other people's work. You have to do that in order to get enough experience to develop your own techniques, right? So the first thing that you do is, you get a sense of direction. This is the direction that I'm going to go in, but don't be so specific that you limit your options. Then as you move forward in that general direction, learn everything you can from everybody that's around you, but then try to adapt it in a way that just makes it look a little different to what everybody else is doing. Sometimes it's not even necessarily that different. It's about thinking how you can present it in a way that people haven't seen before. So it's about it's about lateral thinking. It's about saying, well, I could use this technique to do something else. When we had a guest that Cynthia had organized, Chad, who was talking about making props using a lot of digital techniques and different programs and various other things, which I wouldn't normally be thinking of doing. I know that you do, some 3D printing and other stuff. It suddenly occurred to me that, and it was something that Chad had already done, in fact, but it suddenly occurred to me that you could use the 3D printing as part of another process. And we had a missing part of Yoda that we had gotten a really bad cast off of foam latex, which had shrunken. And so I sent that to Chad, and he resized it to the original size. And then Cynthia here printed it. But then That's not the finished item, because that just gives me the form. I then mold that, make it in clay, and add all the detail that's been lost over the years. So it's a way of taking something that's already out there, but realizing that you can use it in a way that people are not using it, just by thinking laterally. And Chad had, I started talking about making molds from 3D. So you 3D print molds rather than 3D print what you take out of the mold. And so you've got something physically made out of a 3D printed mold. And if there's any loss of detail, which is in the 3D printing, you can restore that when you pull the item out, if you pull it out in a sculptable form. So it's a matter of looking at the things around you and saying, you know what? I could make something else out of that. Look at an ice cream scoop. I know this sounds crazy. An ice cream scoop, you scoop the ice cream and you pull a little handle and a little blade goes round and it separates the ice cream from the scoop. If you look at that scoop and you say, well, if I took this part off, I've got an eyelid mechanism. Because you've got a little handle on the side, you pull the trigger and it makes the section in the scoop move. So look at that and say, I could adapt something that I found in a hardware store to make, eyelids work. Look at everything. When I go shopping with my wife and she's wandering around looking for something she wants, I'm just browsing and looking at things. I love to just wander through a hardware store and say, oh yeah, well that was made for holding stuff together in a hurricane. But if I just flatten one side of it, then I could use it for something entirely different. Let your brain, think. Look at what people are doing, adapt it into something that's new. That was a good question. Phil, I'm back to you again.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to grab a question that I see somebody posted in the YouTube chat, because I think it's a great question. If you were asked to help come up with some cool villains for the, I guess for Mandalorian, for the Star Wars universe as it is ongoing today, what kind of villains would you throw into the mix?
What kind of villains would I throw into the mix? Yeah, well, today movies are not necessarily made quite the same way that they used to be. And for something big like Star Wars, I'm being practical now, they actually will do a whole load of designs. One person does designs, whether they're practical or not is another question, because they're an illustrator, they're not a fabricator. And then they will give that to someone else who will run a team and give it to a sculptor who sculpts something, and then someone else will take it from there and take that sculpture and try to make it more practical. That, when they're making costumes, you don't get one person that's making the whole costume even anymore. You got one person making the pants and someone else is making the breastplate and someone else is making the jacket. So I don't think that there's any chance in the world that anyone would ask me anymore to get out there and do that. Because when I design something, I'm designing it knowing what the manufacture challenges are going to be and thinking about how we're gonna film it. I mean, often I will sit down with a director and say, let's do a storyboard for these sequences, and if in the storyboard I only see the left side of a face, well, to save money and to save time, maybe I'll only artwork one side of the face. Maybe I'm going to give you exactly the shot that you see in this storyboard. They don't let people do that anymore, and I don't, certainly not on big movies like Marvel and other stuff. Everything is very corporate in the way that it's put together. For me, I keep coming back to practical effects. And there is something that no one seems to be doing that for me is really obvious. And that would be to create outlandish and deformed characters by digitally manipulating prosthetic makeups. So, for example, Snoke, which I personally felt looked very much like a cartoon, even though it's, you know, in a new movie, because with a cartoon, just the light that is falling, you know, on that digital manipulation is a manipulation in itself, because the light's not really there. And as it moves around, the lights and the shadows are all, you know, effectively graphic, rather than being natural. So you lose a certain degree of subtlety. I would have got an actor whose face best suited the character and done a prosthetic on that person so that he could perform all of the parts himself in real time. And then, but I would have done it against green screen, even though I spoke against green screen earlier. And then I would have digitally manipulated his face so that maybe his eyes were bigger than they possibly could be, and maybe his face was bent more than it possibly could be. So I got the benefit, the best of the digital out of the best of the practical. And I don't see anybody, you know, that is actually specifically doing that at the moment. And I think, you know, I think that would be the way it is. I also believe in a degree of spontaneity. You get, when you do something that is already pre-designed by an illustrator or a cartoonist or whatever else, and they will argue with you over changing anything, there's no spontaneity in what you do. Sometimes there's a great deal of character that comes out of that last little thing you did, where you just twisted his mouth this way, or you twisted something another way. When I did the makeup for Dengar, for example, I had no idea that character would be anything more than a guy in the background, and I gave him a scarred face. That was completely impromptu. It was like stand there and look at him and say, well, the face folds a little bit here. He's got a bit more flesh here. Let me just squeeze that together and make that work. And I think that spontaneity is more inspiring than saying, oh, here I am again to do this makeup, to do this thing that someone else has designed.
I've got a very good villain monster for Mandalorian. Groku's very angry mother.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, we haven't had any of his species that have turned to the dark side, have we? That would work well too. So cool.
Mega cool.
Rogue One PR. You know, Eric, you know, why don't you tell us a little something about you too? Tell us about your group and about what you've been doing with your group.
Well, nothing different for the old kind of group that maybe all the guests here knows, as 501st, Rebel Legion, Mandalorian Mercs. We do the same. We do charities, events, anything that we can make the kids happy.
Yeah, make the kids happy, but of course make yourself happy too, because there's a lot of fun being an adult playing, you know, dress up. I think there's a lot of fun in that helps to bring out that inner child in us all. But you do stuff for charity too, don't you?
Yes, of course. And
yeah.
Talking about the costume, I was going to ask you, how did you feel that first time that you put the Jedi dress, the Jedi costume, remember?
How did I feel the first time I saw that? You mean on set?
No, not sewing. When you used the costume.
Oh, when I put it on. Okay, yeah. I did that for a couple of things with you, and then later on at Celebration when they were making me an honorary member of the 501st. I put a rebel costume on, yeah, it was fun. Of course, I'm a kid at heart too. I think that's one of the things about all us makers. It allows us to to pander to our inner child. It allows us to to have fun. One of the problems, I was talking to a kid this week who was 10, and I said, when you get to be a teenager, people are going to try and beat that imagination out of you. They're going to say to you, look, you've got to get sensible now. You're going to be leaving school in 5 years, and you've got to get a job, and you've got to be practical, and you've got to be this, and you've got to be that. Part of what I'm trying to do when I'm inspiring people like Nick and the people who went to work on Rogue One is to believe that you can hold on to that. You can. There's no reason why you have to throw all your dreams away and be less imaginative. You just, maybe you're going to have to be sensible some of the time and imaginative some of the time. You do what you have to do. Like you've got your work that you go and work at that pays the bills, and I know you enjoy a lot too. And then you come home and start making costumes and props and various other things too. And it's fun also to be able to do that with your kids. I imagine, because all your kids make props too.
We love what we do.
Yeah. So anyway, tell me, what's your question?
Okay, talking a lot about props, what kind of skills do you think it takes to be a prop master like you?
Oh, that's easy. It's perseverance. Anybody can be anything that they stick at long enough to make it happen. The problem is most people, they try something, they fail at it, and then they say, oh, no, I'm no good at that. Like they expected it was just going to fall from their fingertips. Talent is all well and good, as I say in my book, but it's perseverance that succeeds. It's no good being talented if no one gives you the opportunity. You got to be perseverant. You got to persevere and knock on the doors until someone lets you in. You've got to be. I had a time in my 20s when I developed my drawing skills because I thought it would make me a better and more versatile makeup artist if I did. And I was stuck at home, and so for 6 months I did portraits every day. And at the end of 6 months, I had done 180 times 5 portraits. And by that time, I had made enough mistakes to not make those mistakes again. And so, I say to people, don't expect to be good at something when you first start. Just, go at it, get it wrong, go at it again, get it better. Go at it again, get it okay. Go at it again, get it quite good. Go at it again, get it right. You have to do it and make those mistakes and not be afraid to make those mistakes. Every time you make a mistake, it's not a failure, it's a setback. So that's what it takes to be a master at anything, whatever it happens to be. Keep going until you've got enough experience to know what you're doing.
Go for it.
Yeah. So I'm back to Cynthia again. Cynthia, tell us about yourself too, and tell us about tell the people who don't know you about how you came from being a fan and doing cosplay to working for Disneyland.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that perseverance story, honestly, like you were talking about, where I started out just, I was really inspired by the film and media that I saw. Like I love Marvel, honestly. That's my big one. I love Star Wars as well. I've visited Star Wars Celebration at least a couple times. But it was kind of that transition of like, I really, really love this culture. I love the pop culture. And I kind of wanted to be one of those people that was influencing kind of what people were wearing at these events and things like that. So I kind of just figured out how to get involved with like the Disney creative costuming and things like that. And I honestly, at the beginning, was not the best seamstress, to be honest. I mean, it took a lot of work and a lot of heartache just to get to that level. And even now, like, it's still like I'm always learning every day from the people around me. Now that, to be honest, like, I started my career in my making of costumes even before YouTube was a thing. So it was kind of like, you know, seeing how technology is evolving every day it can be overwhelming, but it's certainly not a detriment to me. And, you know, once again, like, if you have that mindset of, if I just keep going and don't get discouraged, like, I can now be helping to build, you know, Marvel Land for Disneyland Paris or the cruise ships or things like that. So it's kind of wild to think, like, where your origin was and how, like honestly, sitting at home, I think my family thought, oh, you know, this is just a phase. Like, she'll probably grow out of making superhero costumes in the house, you know? And then I was like, nope, never going to grow out of this. And now, like, it is genuinely my career. So I think I have this similar origin story to a lot of people that are involved in film now. Like, it's kind of really cool to be involved in the world now and just talk to other makers. Like, you know, some of the guests I've brought on the show, Nick, like Kelly Sircone, who was a seamstress for Mandalorian, or Brian Sipe, or things like that. It was just kind of like, also just hearing other people's stories is really inspiring too. So we kind of all feed off of each other.
One of the things that I say in the book is to build on something you've got a passion for, because the passion that you had for, you know, for going to conventions and doing your cosplay carried you through the difficulties of learning how to make stuff that much better. The enthusiasm that you had for one thing helps you learn something entirely different. And if you have a passion for something, you don't look at your watch and say, oh, it's 4 o'clock. I'm going home in an hour. So maybe I'll start thinking about packing up my stuff and doing, because you're not thinking about going. Instead, you're looking at your watch saying, oh, it's 7 o'clock. I should have called someone to tell them I was going to be home late, or whatever, right? Your passion carries you through, and that is a critical thing. You know, I say, don't expect to be the best person at anything. Just try to be better. Just try to learn from everyone that's around you. So
that's simple.
Nick, Nick has been, you know, he had a passion for making his helmets and his props and his other things, and I think that's taken him to a number of different places. And Nick now has this, has very kindly started a raffle for a Grogu in carbonite. If you got that there, Nick, is that nearby?
Yeah, I can go grab it. It's right behind me.
Yeah, let's see it. Let's take a look at that.
Very cool.
I like his salacious crumb too.
Yeah, I was like, I actually like the salacious crumb on the chair.
Yeah, I got a feeling that one's a little undersized.
Oh, yeah.
So there it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's done a really nice job with it.
Wow.
You know, it's very 3D. It's very recognizable. He's even got, you know, lights and things on the side. I mean, I think he's done a lovely job with that. You know,
beautiful.
Good job. All from the passion of doing it. And Nick is, you know, such a kind-hearted guy. I like to think maybe he gets a little of that from my encouragement, but he's such a kind-hearted guy that he's donating the proceeds to he's donating the proceeds to our non-profit foundation. What are you going to be making next, Nick?
Well, along with the Baby Yoda and carbonite, I also have these droid fingers that you can win as well. So there's 2 options for like a second place runner-up. But in terms of current projects, I am currently working on the Boba Fett's new armor from The Mandalorian, the one he wears in episode 15 and 16, his like repainted armor. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Really cool.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the stuff you're dealing with is armor, and you're doing quite a lot that is 3D printed, I think.
Yeah, the armor behind me was originally 3D printed, but I honestly do not trust like just raw 3D prints to just withstand for armor. So I always, if I do helmets or armor, I always make molds and then fiberglass resin casts. So that's all behind me. That's fiberglass and resin. Same with all these helmets behind me.
Have you worked with the flexible 3D printed material?
I have not worked with the flexible. I only do PLA.
I got Cynthia to print this Yoda foot that was missing in flexible so that I could pull a rigid cast directly off it. And so it's quite an interesting material for armor because it's flexible. So, you know, you haven't got hard bits that are cutting into your shoulders or into your chest, or if you got it a little narrow around the waist, it'll flex to fit you. I mean, Cynthia would know more about that than I would, but I'm sure she'd be happy, you know, to tell you if you connect with her later on down the line. So, Nick, what's your next question?
My next question is from a friend of mine. They want to get into like special effects, makeup, and like skin type prosthetics, kind of what you do. And they were just kind of wondering how to get their foot in the door with either movies, films, or anything like that.
Okay, so I assume from that what you're asking is how do you get into the industry rather than how do you learn the skill in the first place?
Right.
Right. I'm going to come back to something I said earlier. You have to be perseverant. You know, you have to keep knocking on the door. You have to keep on. You shorten the odds, basically. First of all, you've got to be able to do the job when someone gives you the opportunity. Unless you manage to get someone to take you on as an apprentice. The two people that I talked to who ended up on Rogue One, I gave them this piece of advice. You know, I said, if you approach someone and you offer to work for nothing to learn from them, most people say, I'm not going to work for nothing. You know, I don't want to do that, right? Well, guess what? When you go to college, you work for 3 years for nothing, and you actually pay the people for what they teach you. And guess what? The people who are teaching at college are not the cutting edge people who are doing all the best jobs. So if you can get in as an apprentice with a cutting edge person who is doing all the best work, you, as you grow up within their team, become heir apparent for all the best jobs. When you leave college, what you've got is a college degree and you don't know anybody, and you've got to start from scratch to start to put together the networking. So, you know, you go and you find out who are the cutting edge people in your area, and you try to connect with them. You connect with them at any event that you can. You write to them. You leave stuff on their social media. Hey, you know, you turn. I used to. When I wanted to get into the business, I needed a union card because in England, everything was done in the studios. Whereas in the States, there are lots of shops that are prop builders that are outside the studios, and they will take somebody on who doesn't have a union card. But the principle is the same. To get my union card, I had to get the people who were already doing the jobs to accept the idea that they'd allow me to come in and be their competition. So there was nothing to encourage them to let anybody in, right? Other than when there were a lot of films being made and they were stuck and they needed help that they didn't have because everyone was working. So, you know, I wrote to them and I got a letter coming back telling me that they got my information on file, and if they needed anyone, they come back to me, which is like saying, bog off, go away. We don't want to hear from you anymore. And most people give up at that point and say, well, I tried, and then they go work in some other place. What I did was I found out where they held their union meetings, and I showed up at every union meeting for 2 years until they were sick of seeing me and they let me in. Perseverance, banging on the door, you know. After I got in, I still didn't know the people who could give me the work very much. I mean, I saw them at union meetings. Now I could see them face to face instead of them just being a name. I stood up and made sure I said something at every union meeting, whether it would make a lot of sense or not, just so that they would know who I was, because they'd call my name out when I stood up. I would go to the studio and wave my union card, get into the studio, hang out in the canteen and talk to anybody to make sure that they knew who I was. And when they needed someone, they'd pick me over the other people they didn't know. Perseverance is what succeeds. You need to study the not just how to do something, but study the way the business works. Find out who are the people who can give you the job. Don't write to George Lucas. He's got someone else who gives the job to someone else, who gives the job to someone else, who gives the job to a head of department who's going to hire you. You need to know who is the person who could hire you. And then you need to stalk them for a couple of years until they give you a chance to work for nothing. Just tell them, I'll come. I love it. I'll come. I'll work for you for nothing. Just give me a chance. And if you're any good, they won't let you work for nothing. They'll start to pay you a little something as a you know, to sweep the floor and learn the other stuff, and you'll grow into being in the business. That's the way to do it. It's not a short, it's not a short story. Speak, Cynthia. You're going to tell me from your experience.
Oh, yeah. So no. And I was just going to add to that, just from like my experience, even though my side is costuming as opposed to FX makeup, but they do intersect quite a bit. If your friend is extremely serious about this is the path and this is the only path that they want, location is also going to be the big one, similar to Nick, like knocking on the door. Honestly, I personally, not that it's really detrimented my career, because, you know, I work in Orlando, essentially. That's where I work at. But I've missed so many opportunities from people because not being physically in Los Angeles, I think being in the location that you want to be involved in is going to help you out so much, because the movie industry moves so quickly that they often need things like in a week. And because I am all the way on the other side of the country, if a friend, I'll use this as an example, that there was the music video for Snoop Dogg where he was in the Mandalorian armor that just got posted like 2 days ago. The costumer for that, I know her personally, and she posted literally on her Facebook, and she was like, can anybody make a costume for a dog? Because they made like a little spacesuit for the dog that Snoop Dogg has. And because I'm not in LA, I couldn't take the job. So oftentimes being physically strategic is going to be the best thing for you in the long run. The only reason that I still get work occasionally is because I've built my network over years and years. But still, sometimes I kick myself that I'm not like in the location where it's happening, you know, because then I can literally take those jobs that need a week turnaround and things like that and really build my network a lot faster. So yeah,
I'm going to add to that too, Cynthia, that you know, one of the things I said is you shorten the odds. The location is part of shortening the odds. You know, you don't sit home and wait for something to happen, or write a letter and wait for something to happen. You get off your butt, you go to a place where you know those people are going to be. Like I went to the studio, you know, it's shortening the odds. It's putting yourself in the right place for people to see you. In the States, I would say that anyone who wants to get into the business, there are so many shops that are making props and various other things that you know, you just keep knocking on all of those doors until you can get someone to you know, to let you in, because that is going to make that work. And if you know that person's working in a particular place, get to a point where you can meet that person so that they know who you are. You're not just a name at the bottom of an email that they've forgotten by the time they've had another 10 emails, right? And so, yeah, location is an important part of that. Although there is also, I know at least one very prominent makeup effects artist who actually crews through Facebook, and is on a lot of those Facebook prosthetics and props groups. And when he's got a job and he needs someone else, and it's going to be built at his house or at his workshop, and he doesn't have to worry about union issues, he'll just say, I'm looking for 2 trainees and whatever for a 12-week job. So keep your eye on that too. So let me see how we're doing. We're hitting an hour and 40 minutes. I think we should call this quits at 2 hours. Phil, I'm down to you here. So we're looking at you in your recording studio, right? So there's all your equipment stuck in the corner there. You know, when I first met you, I think you were busking in the train station and doing stuff with the Joko cruises and other things. You followed your dream and made something work, invested in yourself and invested in learning new techniques, I'm sure. Tell us about your studio.
Well, you know, I've been a customer in recording studios. Way back many years ago, I was living in Berlin. I was writing songs with my sister and visiting some recording studios. So I've been on the other end of the mic, and like you said, when we met, I was busking in the train station, and eventually they invited us all to go to the School of Audio Engineering here in Vienna and record some songs. All of us buskers from the public transportation system here. And then it occurred to me when I was there that I could study recording and that maybe I would get good at it. At the time, I was also hosting an open mic in Vienna, and I started recording a little radio show. So I was already doing little bits and at home, but you know, I'd never really taken the idea of being a recording studio engineer seriously. And all of a sudden, it struck me when I was there. I'm like, why don't I sign up and go back to school? I'm only 40. So I did that. I signed up and I started taking classes, and I got super into it. And then I started, you know, geeking out and getting a couple cool pieces of gear, and that just snowballed into a recording studio. And there was a moment actually that was very important in this whole process. I realized that I was going all in. I was literally going to do this thing. I was going to start this studio. I tried to get a job at one of the best places so I could just, you know, learn from the best and maybe end up at a studio. Nobody was hiring. Nobody was interested. And I realized the only way I was going to do this is to just do a lot of recording. And then I talked to my friend who's also a recording artist. Her name is Jean Gray. And I said, listen, Jean, I'm thinking of doing this studio. I think I'm going to do it. But it is scaring me so much. And I read your book, and I read, you know, don't be normal, just put it in, persevere. And I was doing all those things, but, you know, it came to like printing a business card. It came to like actually opening my door and telling people, this is what I do. You can work with me.
You have to be courageous to follow your dream.
Right. It scared me.
One of the issues is overcoming self-doubt.
Exactly. And what I did is I told her this. I said, you know, I'm full of self-doubt and I'm freaking out and I'm scared. And you always told me, oh, just do it. You're going to be great. And then she said something really interesting. She said, Philip, I think you're going to do this and it's going to be great. But you know what? If you fail, that's okay too. If it doesn't work out, and if you don't end up doing anything great with it, that's okay. Then you'll do something else. But I think it's going to work. And that gave me this hope. Like, it was okay if it didn't work out. It was going to be okay either way. Even if I put all my life savings into a recording studio and opened my doors and nobody showed up, that's okay. I wasn't going to die because of this. So then I was like, you're right. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it. And then I did it. And I'm in year 2 and I'm working 7 days a week. I finally realized that I need to rest my ears. And I decided Monday and Tuesday is my weekend. I'm going to not book any sessions on those 2 days so I can rest my ears and maybe write some of my own songs again, which
it's also in the book where I say, that setbacks, as I like to call it, rather than failures, because you've only failed when you give up, right? Setbacks are okay. You learn more from a setback than you do from a success.
Yeah,
you learn how not to do something, and you're not measured by how many times you get knocked down. You're measured by how many times you pick yourself up again, right? You succeed by continually overcoming those challenges that keep putting themselves in your way. And whatever happens, whatever you do, it might not work out the way that you thought it would, but you're going to learn something. You're going to learn some new skills. In fact, in anything like that, you learn a ton of new skills. When the equipment breaks down, you learn how to solder the wires back on again, or whatever it is, right? You learn all kinds of other things that don't go away when you move on to something else, and you build on your failures as well as you do from your success. So you should never be afraid.
And I found everything I've done until now has come together. I mean, I've built some of the equipment you see here. I've 3D printed parts. I've really put everything together that has led up to this moment in my life. And I've lost clients, but every time I learn something to move forward with and be better on the next job. And it's a process.
I want to say something else there that you touched on indirectly. You talked about being 40. I see kind of people that have gone on into their life and they are doing what they do because that's what they do, because that's what the neighbors do, because and they've basically settled into a rut. And by the time they get to 40 or 50, they've given up. They'd say, oh yeah, but it's too late for me, right? It's never too late to turn something around. You've turned yourself around at 40. I had a guy who wanted to be a doctor and was in his mid-50s. And I said, well, don't be a surgeon with a shaky hand, but, you could still, have a career and have 10 years of satisfaction, if not more, achieving that dream. And he came back 6 years later as a psychiatrist. There are elements that are there. It's never ever too late to follow something. And I say in my book, if you're young, you have to focus on what you're doing to show those older folks that you're not flibbity gibbet and fly by night. And if you're old, you need to get out of the chair and shake things up to show those younger people that you're not beyond it and out of the way. Get out there, do it, make something happen.
I gotta say, part of that really was your book. I had the luck of getting to read it before it got published, and it really moved me to say, stop listening to the people around me telling me what I should do with my life, and just do what I think is right, and just go with it. And that really helped me, gave me the courage to move in a direction that I could be proud of, and challenge myself and do something different that nobody would have expected that I would do this at this age.
Cool.
And I got a lot of slack for it, but I know I'm doing the right thing.
Well, you know, there's always going to be people who will criticize you for doing something that is not, in inverted commas, normal. Eric, turn your mic on. It's going to be your last question, and then we'll start to wrap things up. Tell me.
So the last question, I think that is when you're coming back.
Yeah. Well, I would like to. You know, there was a project in Puerto Rico that was looking kind of interesting to me when I last saw you, and I'm not sure that that's gonna necessarily work out. I need someone to invite me back for a convention or for something else. I never take a holiday. I haven't taken a holiday in oh God, I don't know. Probably 40 years. You know, when I go away and I do a convention, those are my holidays. I like the change of pace and the change of scenery. And I love Puerto Rico because the people are so warm there. Especially, I love the symphony orchestra there, who are really very talented, and the Puerto Ricans are very warm-hearted. They make me feel very welcome. So, you know, I will get there as soon as I have the opportunity to do it.
Okay.
Cool.
Next
Cynthia,
month.
What?
Next month.
Hey, organize something. I'll be there. Okay.
Okay.
Just don't make it the 21st and 22nd the next month, because I'm supposed to be at Pensacola.
Okay.
So, okay. Right. Cynthia, thank you so much for being part of this. As always, you've been such a fantastic supporter, knowledgeable, and you know, your contribution to the conversation is always you know, something I really appreciate. What's your last question? I think she's frozen up there.
Frozen carbonite.
Actually, Cynthia, yeah, I didn't understand. I'm not understanding any of that. Ask again.
Oh no, my connection is now
hold on a second. Hold on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on to Nick, and I'm going to come back to Cynthia. Maybe her internet will settle down in that time. Nick, turn your mic on, please. Nick, tell me, what's your last question?
My last question would be, throughout your book, you referred to a notebook that you would write down your ideas or things that inspired you. Did you ever write down any names of people, either their work or ethics, that inspired you?
Yeah, I would write down the names of people all the time. You know, because the idea of your notebook, whether it's in my book or whether it's a little notebook, I used to carry, you know, I have a shirt pocket, and I would just carry one of those little tiny notebooks in my shirt pocket. And on one side, I would write down notes, and then I would turn it around the other way. And on the other side, I would write down questions that I had, and then I would look for solutions to those questions. And so I would, here's Cynthia coming back. So you know, that would be something that worked. I would write down the names of anybody that I thought was prominent, and even, you know, even a little course of action. You know, you find someone that's notable, you write their name and you go, write about so and so, or let's visit them in New York or wherever they happen to be. Write down the information, put together a course of action if you can, that will help you, not today, but sometime soon. You know, you have I say in my book, you need a sense of direction to know roughly where you're going. If you don't have a sense of direction, you just go round and round and round and round in circles. So, you know, don't get dizzy. use that. And today it's so much easier because you can answer all your questions by you can answer a lot of questions just through the internet. Just be careful not to listen to lots of people who effectively don't who don't necessarily tell you anything other than an average answer. Be cautious of average answers given by people who don't have the experience. Look for the expert to do that. Eric's kids and family, it's the whole family. Look at this. Eric, turn your mic on. Everybody's here to say hello and goodbye. I love you guys. I like all of you. Yeah, we got baby waving at me here. Yeah, I like that one too. This is the latest addition to the Rogue Ones. I'm still waiting to see his first costume. Yeah, that's right. Very sweet. Nice to see you all. Thank you for that. So, Nick, we had your question. I'm going to try Cynthia again, see whether we can, whether she is able to get through now. Cynthia, what was your last question?
I think I'm able to get through to my very last question was just, do you have what is your most memorable experience from an event, whether it was from a fan or anything?
Yeah. There's been a lot of moments at events, moments where I met people who became new friends, moments where, like at Celebration Chicago, I was talking about the building of Yoda and had a huge crowd that gathered around the prop store stand, which is where I was. Moments like that, which kind of touch your heart. But nothing has ever, touched me the same way as standing with the Puerto Rico Symphony Orchestra behind me, talking to an audience of 500 and something people who literally gave me a standing ovation and made me feel like, I was George Lucas rather than just some little guy who helped to put the characters together. That really is, was really very special. And every time they have a symphony orchestra Star Wars John Williams show, I try to go to be with them because it's just such a special experience. Thank you for that one. So, Philip, I'm back to you. This is the last question that I'm going to take. Turn your mic on. There you go. Tell me, what have I got to say?
Well, you almost just took it out of my my mind. I was going to ask, as a music producer guy, how did you and Yoda come to, in your spare time, conduct symphony orchestras?
Yeah, well, isn't that a great one? See, every opportunity, everything that you take becomes a base for a next set of opportunities. You can stay in that one little square, or as people like to say, stay in the box, and never, experience anything other than what you are right now. Or you can grow out of the box based on what you hang on, where am I? To expand, this way or expand that way to really grow that base. And every time you learn something new, that gives you the base for another set of experiences. Every time you get invited to do something, you meet a new bunch of people and a new bunch of things. I was there at the time. I think Eric had organized me being at the Puerto Rico Comic-Con, and it turned out that the symphony orchestra was doing a Star Wars show, and so someone made them aware of the fact that I was there, and they were playing Yoda's theme, and they invited me to come and speak to the audience, which again I did in my usual way of of going out and giving them a little bit of history about what it was like to be a young wannabe who managed to get onto a team building this strange movie called Star Wars that everyone thought was going to be some kind of child's thing because it was a movie about wizards and gunslingers in space, and no one was going to take that seriously in the 70s. And also to, to try to uplift them, to, to understand that take that opportunity. Where would I be if I hadn't started there? I said, if I hadn't been there for the phone to ring, not only would I not have worked on Yoda, I wouldn't have stood in front of the symphony orchestra. That's for sure. I wouldn't be doing conventions to the level that I am now. I wouldn't get to encourage other people to follow their dreams because I wouldn't have followed my dreams, and so I wouldn't have that experience. It's all a matter of making the most of the first opportunity and then grasping the second one that comes from it, and the third one, and the 50th one, and the 100th one. And I guess people like the fact that instead of just sitting there saying, oh, I'm important, I worked on Yoda and made, 60 movies and painted 400 paintings, that I try to encourage Nick and other people to do that. Every kid that comes into the museum, I try to encourage them to be something more than their classmates. And I hope that ultimately that is what my legacy will be. My legacy won't just be, that I made some movies and I made some interesting characters, that I will have been able to inspire people and change a few lives. So there you go. I want to thank you all for making this actually a great discussion. We've actually held our audience fairly well all the way through this, whereas usually I see the numbers going up and down all the time as people watch for 2 minutes and then disappear. It's been really good, and I want to thank you. I think Eric's going to show me Grogu again. I think he's there, isn't he? Yeah, there he is. There he is. Hi, bye. There you go. One at a time, Phil. Thanks for coming from Vienna. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping I'm going to get to see you sometime soon, somewhere. Okay, and remember, you're always welcome here too. Take care, and we'll talk again on online. Bye. And Nick, same with you. Keep doing what you're doing. I think you've made a really great start. I might even take the helmet. He made a helmet for me that is Boba Fett helmet with Yoda ears, which I might take to the next convention if I got room in my luggage. But it's a really fun piece. Keep your sense of humor. Keep making things. Have a great time. I hope you enjoyed being part of this show.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Eric, I'll try to get to Puerto Rico soon. It's not that far away. I'd like the opportunity.
I will be waiting for you, brother.
Okay, my friend. Take
Cheers
care.
For that.
Yeah. Make sure you got one of those for me.
Of course.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Cynthia, you are, a mainstream for me. When I had someone that dropped out, I only asked you to do this last night.
It's okay.
I was really thrilled, and you asked some really smart questions too, and contributed from your own experience. I really liked it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I really thank you. And I'm always here, like I said, Cynthia to the rescue. So
all right. Take care. Thank you again. Bye. So here we are. It's just me and you. It's the Yoda Guy saying thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed talking to all these guests. If you did, leave a message or join us along the way. We've just recently started on Instagram. If any of you have got Instagram, we're posting there literally twice a day, little memories of different things with some of the images. So you'll find me there as Real Yoda Guy. And I've started posting on Twitter again after 5 years. So that's Star Wars Yoda Guy. So thank you for watching. May the force be with you always, and may your horizons be broadened by some of the Folly of Star Foundation's shows. Thanks again. Take care. See you next week.